Madame Li entered the room and immediately smelled a foul stench. She then saw Sect Master Ma and Elder Qian seated cross-legged on either side of the bed, both with their eyes closed as they regulated their breathing. Between them, in the open space, was a basin of pitch-black, ink-like blood water. The foul smell was precisely emanating from it. The two men's faces were somewhat pale, clearly indicating that, just as Han Li had said, they had expended a great deal of their energy. Madame Li immediately felt a hint of gratitude toward them. Although she did not know martial arts, she had been exposed to such matters enough to know it was inappropriate to disturb them at this moment. She therefore slowed her steps and quietly walked to the bedside, looking at the person lying there. Elder Li on the bed was sleeping soundly. The pained expression between his brows had completely vanished. Although his complexion was still slightly sallow, the black chi on his face had completely disappeared. The poison spots on his body had also faded to faint water-like traces that were almost impossible to see. It seemed the poison had truly been completely dispelled. Madame Li could not help but burst into tears of joy. After a long while, she wiped away her tears and thought that she should return to properly thank Han Li. So she quietly made her way back to the main hall. However, as soon as she reached the doorway, she was immediately surrounded by people questioning her all at once, but she did not see Han Li among them. She could not help but feel slightly surprised and hurriedly asked about Marrow and the others. After hearing their replies, Madame Li learned that after Han Li prescribed a health-restoring medicinal formula, he had already taken his leave and departed gracefully, not staying any longer. After hearing this, Madame Li remained silent for a long time, but in her heart she had already decided that once Elder Li recovered, the couple would personally visit him to offer a heavy reward in gratitude for saving his life. Madame Li did not realize that, besides the divine physician Han in the room, another person was missing, Li Feiyu, who had originally never left Xianxia's side. Beside a remote path, under a dense large tree, Han Li, who had just left Elder Li's residence, was lying on the grass with his hands behind his head, boredly counting the green leaves on a tree branch. When he had counted nearly 1,000, a black shadow descended from the sky, pouncing toward him like an eagle grabbing a chick, looking extremely fierce, as if bearing a deep grudge. "Hey, stop fooling around. Every time we meet, why are you always trying to lay hands on me? I'm not Xianxia." As soon as Han Li said this, the black shadow nimbly twisted in midair, landing lightly beside him with an exceptionally graceful movement. It was none other than Li Feiyu, who had followed closely behind. "Han Li, with your dark, unremarkable appearance, you still think you can compare to Miss Xianxia? Isn't that just insulting her?" Li Feiyu said unhappily. He then lightly kicked Han Li on the butt with the tip of his foot as a form of punishment. Han Li rolled his eyes, then flipped up with a carp-like motion and stood up. "It seems our senior brother, Li, really values romance over friendship. I truly chose my friends poorly. Cut the nonsense. Why did you call me out here? You know how hard it was for me to finally find a chance to get close to Miss Zhang, and you just wasted it like this. If you don't give me a reason I can accept, you won't get away with it." Li Feiyu said angrily, clearly furious about being dragged out for no reason. "Did I ask you to come out? I don't recall that. Did I ever say it myself?" Han Li feigned great surprise, deliberately exaggerating his reaction. "You were winking at me when you left. Unless someone is blind, anyone could tell. Stop beating around the bush. If there's nothing important, I'm going back." Li Feiyu turned as if to leave, making it hard to tell whether he was serious or not. Han Li did not intend to tease him further, and suddenly became serious. "Don't blame me for being nosy, but as a friend I want to ask you something. Does Xianxia know that you took the Marrow Extraction Pill and only have a few years left to live?" At this, Li Feiyu's face instantly turned deathly pale, without a trace of color. He did not speak for a long time. Han Li let out a soft sigh, realizing there was no need to ask further. The other's expression already said everything. "Why did you have to wake me up so harshly?" Li Feiyu's expression was sorrowful. After a long silence, he finally spoke in pain. Han Li did not answer his question, but gently patted his shoulder in comfort. You should have heard that with emotions, the more you give, the more pain you will eventually suffer. Han Li finally spoke a somewhat philosophical line when the other's emotions had slightly stabilized, causing Li Feiyu to freeze. I pulled you out before you got too deeply involved, so that you would suffer less in the future, Han Li added slowly. Li Feiyu stared blankly at Han Li, his gaze somewhat strange. What? Got a problem with that? Han Li felt a bit uneasy under his stare and quickly looked himself over. You're still just a kid. How are you talking like some seasoned romantic who's seen through the mortal world? Don't tell me you've already experienced love between men and women. Li Feiyu suddenly asked. Of course not. I just read it in books. I thought it made a lot of sense, so I used it to comfort you. Oh, so that's how it is. I was wondering about that. With my handsome, dashing appearance, how could I possibly be behind you in this regard and need you lecturing me on emotions? So it was all just empty talk. Li Feiyu let out a long breath and repeatedly patted his own chest, as if he had been badly frightened. Han Li was speechless. This guy really recovered too quickly. He had just been acting like the world was ending, and in the blink of an eye he was back to being all smiles and jokes. He really was an emotional one. Still, Han Li pressed on relentlessly and asked, have you really given up on Miss Xianxia? Even if you saw her in someone else's arms, you wouldn't feel anything. Li Feiyu's playful expression instantly turned ice cold. With killing intent in his voice, he said coldly, whoever dares touch Miss Zhang, I'll chop off his hands. I don't care about what happens after I die, and I can't control it either. But as long as I'm alive, Xun'er can only belong to me. His words were so cold, they seemed capable of freezing people solid. Han Li looked at Li Feiyu's suddenly domineering expression and fell silent solemnly, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, Li Feiyu's aura retracted completely, returning to his usual, joking demeanor. He blinked at Han Li and laughed loudly. How was that? Wasn't my aura strong just now? Pretty domineering, right? Like a peerless tyrant. You must be utterly impressed and ready to pledge loyalty to me on the spot. Han Li didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had just been somewhat moved by the earlier words, but those last remarks instantly ruined the mood and brought him right back to reality. He glared at Li Feiyu for a long while through gritted teeth and said, a tyrant? I think you look more like a cowardly bear. Li Feiyu laughed heartily without care, his laughter extremely unrestrained, seemingly quite pleased that he had briefly intimidated Han Li. Gradually, Han Li calmed down again. Amid the other's laughter, he suddenly said indifferently, I already warned you before, and you know your own situation very well. So I'll ask you again seriously. If you disperse your cultivation, I can extend your life by many more years. That way you could live with Ms. Zhang for a long time. Are you really not going to reconsider? Li Feiyu's laughter came to an abrupt stop. His expression darkened, and sharp light burst from his eyes as he stared straight at Han Li without replying. Han Li remained composed, showing no change in expression, simply meeting his gaze with clear eyes. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Li Feiyu finally withdrew the sharpness in his eyes, his expression softening slightly. Han Li, you know I would never consider dispersing my cultivation. I know you mean well, but don't bring it up again, all right? He forced a smile and said, his tone carrying a hint of pleading. Besides, do you really think that if I became a powerless nobody, Miss Zhang would still look at me? His words carried a trace of self-mockery. Han Li fell silent. He turned his head away and looked down the path in the direction Li Feiyu had come from. After gazing quietly for a moment, he said in a deep voice, since you've made up your mind, I won't persuade you anymore. Go back. I hope things really work out between you and Miss Xianxia. Upon hearing this, Li Feiyu immediately broke into a delighted smile. He slapped Han Li on the shoulder a few times and said, good brother, I like hearing that. That's the happiest thing I've heard today. I'll take my leave now. He then leapt into the air, and after a few flashes, disappeared at the end of the path, vanishing without a trace. Ow, that hurts! Han Li suddenly clutched his shoulder. Those few slaps from earlier had actually carried inner strength, leaving his shoulders swollen high like a red steamed bun, impossible to touch. This time he had truly suffered a heavy loss. That damn brat, just because I exposed his sore spot, he actually took revenge like this. Han Li thought bitterly while gritting his teeth, hurriedly fumbling in his chest for healing pills. He loosened his clothes and applied them to his shoulder. Sigh, I only acted kind-hearted once, and I ended up like this. I really am not suited for doing good deeds. I'd better go back and continue comprehending spells. I'll settle this sneak attack the next time we meet. Han Li thought somewhat unwillingly. After that, quite some time passed, and Han Li had already turned 18. During this period, the 7 Mysteries Sect, under pressure from the relentless encroachment of the Wild Wolf Gang, finally formally declared war on them. From then on, countless large and small conflicts broke out along the border between the two forces. Many of the companions who had entered the mountains with Han Li had perished in these struggles, leaving him deeply moved. Outside the valley, the giant bell was also rung with increasing frequency due to the rising number of wounded, which in turn allowed Han Li to practice many high-difficulty treatment techniques, greatly improving his medical skills. However, even with Han Li's miraculous healing hands, many mid- and high-level figures still fell. They either died in battle on the spot or were so severely injured that they died on the way, leaving Han Li no chance to treat them. Yet because of this, many young experts on both sides began to emerge, stepping into the positions left vacant by the fallen. For example, the 5 fiends, 3 eagles, and 2 leopards of the Wild Wolf Gang, and the 7 heroes and 2 heroes of the 7 Mysteries Sect were among the most famous. Feiyu was one of the 2 heroes. Having personally killed an enemy's purple-robed banner envoy, he had risen to the high position of Vice Hall Master of the Outer Blade Hall, holding considerable power and authority. Moreover, his relationship with Xun'er was also developing rapidly, already reaching the point of discussing marriage. After learning of this, Han Li could only let out a soft sigh. He did not know whether what Feiyu was doing was right or wrong. After all, he was not Feiyu. Without being personally involved, it was impossible to truly understand the rights and wrongs of the situation. However, if it were him, watching the person he loved fall into another's arms, he knew he could not endure it. Yet even knowing he was about to die and still choosing to marry her, he did not seem to possess such courage either. Thus Han Li could only pretend to be deaf and mute. After all, relationships between people always have closeness and distance, and Feiyu was his friend, so it was only natural for him to slightly side with him. Han Li felt at ease about this. In addition, another extremely important event had recently occurred, occupying most of his attention and leaving him even less able to spare energy for other matters. After countless failures, Han Li finally mastered the use of the wind control art. The wind control art, like the Heavenly Eye technique, is an auxiliary type spell that can only be used on the caster's own body and cannot be applied to others. However, its practical usefulness is far greater than that of the Heavenly Eye technique. After casting the wind control art, Han Li felt as light as a swallow. With a gentle tap of his toes on the ground, he could effortlessly leap several zhang away. The pleasure of sprinting at high speed across the ground and the sensation of easily leaving everything behind made Han Li feel almost addicted. Every day, he would dash around the valley 5 or 6 times before stopping, thoroughly indulging in the thrill of being a lightness skill master. Of course, this acceleration effect was very different from the smoke step. The smoke step focused on exploiting every gap, turning the impossible into possible, achieving bursts of speed over short distances by expending a large amount of physical strength. It was most wondrous when used in confined spaces. The wind control art, on the other hand, was different. Once activated, it continuously consumed a small amount of magical power, but placed no burden on physical strength, allowing unrestricted running without fatigue. The acceleration effect would persist until either the magical power was exhausted or the spell was deactivated. Therefore, it was generally used by low-level cultivators for long-distance travel and was one of the essential spells for cultivators when going out. Since mastering the wind control art, Han Li's interest in the other two spells, the spirit calming talisman and the object control art, had grown even stronger. He devoted a great deal of time and energy to them, hoping that one day he could suddenly comprehend them just as he had with the wind control art. However, after repeated study, Han Li unexpectedly discovered that his inability to cast these two spells might not be due to himself, but rather because the external conditions required for casting were not met. According to the book, the spirit calming talisman is a type of talisman that must be prepared in advance. One must use pre-made magical talismans. Thus, Han Li had previously been using yellow paper bought from nearby towns, drawing the talisman patterns described in the book with a brush to create so-called talismans. Although the book did not specify what kind of material should be used for drawing the talisman patterns, he recalled Dr. Mo's silver pattern talisman and naturally chose the luxurious and expensive silver powder. Whether this pigment was effective or not, Han Li did not know, but at least in appearance, his homemade talismans looked exactly the same as the examples in the book. Unfortunately, mere appearance was not enough. When Han Li used incantations to activate these talismans, the symbols on them did not emit the dazzling silver light as they had when Dr. Mo used them, nor did any other strange phenomena occur. In other words, his attempts at casting completely failed, leaving him in a difficult predicament. He did not know whether the failure was due to incorrect incantations, wrong hand seals, or simply unsuccessful talisman crafting. However, after this research, things were different. Through in-depth investigation of various related materials and books on spell legends and similar topics, Han Li finally discovered that the talisman papers used by cultivators were definitely not ordinary sheets of paper casually drawn on with ink and pigments as mortals understood them. Instead, they must be made from certain special materials unique to cultivators, and perhaps even require specific methods to produce. Therefore, even though his incantations and hand seals were flawless, it was still impossible for the spells to succeed. As for the object control art, the same logic applied. Han Li had previously believed that any random object could be used as a target for casting the spell, so the items he had used while forming seals and chanting incantations were everyday things like furniture or swords. Naturally, none of it produced any effect. But now, reminded by the issue of talisman paper, he finally understood. The objects controlled by the object control art were definitely not ordinary items either, but rather specific objects used by cultivators. So Han Li took all the strange and unusual items he had obtained from Dr. Mo, including the soul-guiding bell and the 7 silver blades used to cast the 7 ghosts' soul-devouring grand magic, and used them as targets for the object control art. He tested them one by one, but unfortunately, not a single item could be successfully manipulated by the spell. This left Han Li deeply disappointed. It seemed that the objects controlled by the object control art were not these magical implements either, but something else entirely. Having roughly identified the root of the problem, and realizing that without the corresponding items, he could not possibly cast the spirit calming talisman or use the object control art, Han Li shifted his focus away from them. Instead, he began considering the idea of combining martial secret techniques with several types of spells, intending to rapidly enhance his own strength and break through to a higher level in a short period of time. With this bold and unconventional idea, Han Li began another arduous journey of self-cultivation and soon achieved some initial success. After a series of attempts, he finally managed to integrate the smoke step with the wind control art. Integration was really just a way of speaking. In reality, it meant first applying the wind control art to his body and then executing the smoke step. However, coordination between the two had to be precisely controlled, or it would easily go wrong. This cost Han Li a great deal of effort and mental energy. But in doing so, the original weakness of the wind control art, its lack of agility in rapid direction changes, and the excessive stamina consumption of the smoke step were gradually compensated for. His movements became as fast as lightning, leaving only after images, making his movement techniques even more ghostly and unpredictable. Not long after, Hanli also developed his own unique approach in the use of the fire pellet technique. Originally, after a small fireball appeared from the fire pellet technique, the caster would use magical power to propel it toward the target to kill the enemy. That was its intended use. But Hanli did not agree with this method. He believed that fireballs propelled by magical power were too slow. Any skilled martial expert could easily dodge them, which greatly limited their effectiveness in real combat and made them somewhat impractical. Therefore, when using the fire pellet technique, he would only complete half the spell. Once the fireball appeared, he would not launch it outward. Instead, relying on its near-indestructible nature, he would treat it as a short, divine blade and control it directly in his hand. In this way, combined with his improved extreme movement techniques and the high-temperature fireball in his hand, Hanli was confident that he could easily kill any expert. With these advantages, Hanli finally felt relieved and no longer worried about his insufficient strength. At last, he could head to Lan Prefecture with confidence to seek detoxification. At this time, Hanli's longevity art had also quietly advanced to the 8th layer through his daily habit of treating spiritual medicines like snacks, greatly increasing his magical power. In terms of pure magical power, Hanli had already surpassed Yu Zitong in his original physical body. However, in terms of a number of spells mastered and actual combat experience, he was still far inferior to Yu Zitong. After all, when Yu Zitong cultivated within his clan, he had elders to guide him above and fellow disciples to spar with below, far beyond what Hanli, who was essentially self-taught, could compare to. Hanli was unaware of all this, and even if he had known, he would not have cared. He had never been arrogant enough to believe that learning a few superficial spells would allow him to stand against true cultivators. His current enemies were still mainly martial artists of the secular world. Thus, Hanli was in a very good mood. Just as he was full of ambition and preparing to find an excuse to leave the 7 Mysteries Sect and descend the mountain, the Wild Wolf Gang suddenly proposed negotiations with the 7 Mysteries Sect. This news caused an uproar within the 7 Mysteries Sect. It was well known that recently the Wild Wolf Gang had held the upper hand in their conflicts, consistently suppressing the 7 Mysteries Sect. Given such an advantageous position, why would they suddenly seek peace talks? Could there be some kind of scheme behind it? This immediately aroused suspicion among many people. In an instant, voices within the 7 Mysteries Sect rose in a chaotic uproar, some agreeing to peace talks, others firmly opposing them. The senior members also held differing opinions, and Feiyu was among those who strongly opposed the negotiations. Since both sides had comparable influence, neither could prevail over the other through debate. In the end, Sect Master Wang made the final decision. They would first negotiate with the other side. If the terms were not too excessive, they would make peace. If the demands were too harsh, they would continue the conflict. Although this compromise pleased neither faction, it was the only feasible middle ground solution. After several rounds of negotiation between the 7 Mysteries Sect and the Wild Wolf Gang, a border area known as Sandfall Slope was mutually agreed upon as the meeting site. As for the personnel participating in the talks, the Wild Wolf Gang firmly insisted that each side must send a leading figure to demonstrate sincerity. Otherwise, there was no need for negotiations at all. This condition did not cause any unrest within the 7 Mysteries Sect, as it was a normal requirement in negotiations. Of course, the true leaders would never personally take such risks. The 7 Mysteries Sect would at most send a vice sect master, while the other side would similarly dispatch a deputy leader to maintain appearances. Thus, this condition posed no problem. Both sides agreed on the exact date of the talks, and each would send a force of over 100 people to the meeting. Fearing ambushes from the other side, the 7 Mysteries Sect made extremely thorough arrangements for both personnel and contingencies. Not only would the negotiating team be led by their second strongest expert, Vice Sect Master Wu, but the nearly 100 members of the team were all elite experts of the sect. Most of them were protectors, honorary elders, and core personnel, with several elders and hall masters accompanying them to reinforce the formation, making the lineup exceptionally formidable. With such a force of experts, even if the Wild Wolf Gang deployed all its elite fighters, they would likely be unable to stop them. The entire 7 Mysteries Sect was extremely confident. Thus, if anything went wrong, the negotiators could rely on their superior martial strength to break through the encirclement and return to their territory, where several elite squads of Bloodblade Hall disciples would be waiting to escort them and ensure a safe retreat. Feiyu also volunteered to join the group. For someone who did not have much time left to live, the more dangerous the place, the more he longed to go. And so, this force, nearly half of the 7 Mysteries Sect's top experts, finally set out from the mountain as the negotiation date approached. The round trip would take at least half a month. It truly would be a long journey. Hanli did not pay much attention to it. Whether the negotiations succeeded or failed meant nothing to him. He was about to leave this place and venture into the outside world. What did the rise and fall of the 7 Mysteries Sect have to do with him? As long as it did not concern his own interests, he was too lazy to involve himself. Thus, during the days after the delegation left, he continued cultivating the medicinal herbs he needed at a leisurely pace, while also collecting seeds of rare medicinal plants for future use. Hanli had already decided that once the negotiating team returned to the mountain, he would formally take his leave from the Sect Masters. If the higher-ups refused to let him go despite not knowing what was good for them, he did not mind revealing his true strength in front of them to completely crush any objections. In truth, slipping away unnoticed would have been the easiest method. However, Hanli worried that if they could not find him, they might trouble his family. Therefore, formally resigning and intimidating them with a display of power was still necessary. As for the excuse for leaving, Hanli had already thought of one. He would say he missed Dr. Mo and intended to go search for his master. As for whether they believed it or not, he did not care at all. With absolute strength as his backing, why would he fear their thoughts? Whenever Hanli thought of this, a faint cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. At this point, if he wanted to take the lives of the Sect Masters, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. Of course, this was only a thought. He would not actually do it. However, what he never expected was that on the 4th night after the delegation left, a ragged man suddenly broke into his room, covered in dust, disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. With cracked lips covered in white flakes, he rasped out a single sentence. The negotiating team is finished. Vice Sect Master Wu is dead. The protectors and honorary elders are dead. Several elders are dead. Almost everyone is dead. Hanli froze upon hearing this, momentarily stunned, before he could even ask for details. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed from somewhere on the mountain. Bang bang. A dull wooden clapper sound followed. Clang clang. Ding ding. Bang bang. All kinds of warning cries rose in unison, followed immediately by the thunderous eruption of countless shouts of kill that echoed across the mountains. From every direction on the mountain, the sounds surged one after another. Amid them, the faint clashing of weapons could also be heard, as if in that instant the entire Rainbow Cloud Mountain had turned into a vast battlefield of slaughter. Han Li's expression changed. He no longer had time to listen to the man in front of him continue speaking. With a flicker of movement, he was already outside the house. He looked around and quickly spotted the tallest building nearby. With a light stamp of his foot, he landed on the rooftop in a single motion, then gazed out toward the valley's exit. His expression was extremely unsightly, dark and grim, because not far ahead, his vision was filled with blazing fires, shadowy figures, and flashes of blades and sword light flickering without end. Everywhere were chaotic cries of slaughter, alarm calls, and furious shouts blending into a single uproar of panic. He heard the sound of wind rushing from behind him, and, without turning his head, asked, Feiyu, is it the Wild Wolf Gang? Yes. I never expected them to plan so thoroughly. They almost completely wiped out our negotiation team, and then immediately followed us survivors up the mountain to attack, the messenger replied. This person was none other than Feiyu, who had left 4 days earlier. At this moment, His voice was filled with anger and unwillingness.